Yes, I believe it does take time away from, you know, writing academic articles, but teaching takes time away from, and committee work takes time away. So I just see it as just something else that's that I'm doing as part of my academic work. I'm not sure how. I doubt I'll get very much credit when I come up for tenure in 3 years, but I think that my colleagues appreciate what I'm doing. The administration in my faculty and at the senior level appreciates what I'm doing. So I get some recognition out of that. And we know there are kinds of recognition that don't count towards tenure, that's for sure. This is probably one of them. The other with respect to plagiarism, or you also mentioned about using the same material. Yes, and I will try to disseminate my own research findings, my own ideas using the blog. But the plagiarism issue I haven't encountered, because I guess I'm using mine in slightly a different way, but I haven't really. I have to give that some more thought. I don't think the way that I'm using it, the students are really finding content that's informally written, or finding, you know, a lot of times in discussion groups in my courses, students will, you know, cite the original source and so on, and if they don't, it's as obvious as if it wasn't a paper and they didn't do that. So I don't know if that helps at all. Carol.
TVO is a television station in Ontario that does a lot of programming, lectures, that kind of thing. And last week, they had Dan Tapscott, who was the Growing Up Digital guy. He was talking. His talk should be online by now. If you just went in tvo.ca or whatever, it's TVO Dan Tapscott. And his whole talk, it's worth taking a look at, because it addresses both of your issues. The difference between taking a look at the technology as being the cause of a problem and being the technology as a site of a problem that pre-exists. And he's really saying, you know, if we're looking at plagiarism, is it because of the technology or is it because of other issues? If we're looking at time issues, is that because of social networking, or is that because of the whole thrust that we just have more? This happens in academic journals too. It's impossible to keep up with the academic journals in any one field anymore. You simply cannot do that, let alone all this other thing. So it's a more macro problem than that. It's probably worth taking a look at that particular talk. It'll be about an hour online, but it's quite a good one.
On the tenure front, I'd speak with your chair and speak with your, dean and that. I know a colleague of mine down at Memphis, actually in his annual review, the 2 pages that you write up, your self-reflection thing, he actually included information about his blog the last time he did his annual review, and went into the internal statistics that it keeps and talked about, the number of hits it was getting, the various parts of both Tennessee, the southeastern U.S., the U.S., and then the world, so he had it broken down basically, that he was getting. And the argument he made to his dean was that, I publish an article in X journal. The 200 people who subscribe to that are going to look at it. You might get maybe, twice that amount, even 10 times that amount that, access it through their university library and the online service. He's getting 7, 8, 10,000 hits every month. Different people coming to his blog to get ideas about things that he's doing in terms of technology and teacher education. So when he looks at the impact that he's having upon the profession, his blogging is where he's having that impact. And it was a lot of the conversation he had with his dean when he finally sat down and met with him for the annual review was about that, because he included it in his write-up. So include that part of make that something that they may not value it. They may value it as much as they value service, and they may put it under that, because in theory that's kind of what it is. I mean, it's a service to your profession, regardless if it's an academic blog or a research-based blog where you're service to the research community, or if it's to your practitioner books. But it still is something that you should be able to put into that process.
In my own professional dossier, obviously it's divided into research, teaching, and service, because that's what my labor is really divided into. I have a section on my blog in the teaching section, and then I have at the end of the service section blogging as an academic service, and so I talk about it in both sections. So, I mean, I'm highlighting it. Whether I'll get credit for it or not, you know, remains to be seen.
Well, I think the most basic way is probably through the comments. You know, people actually leaving their thoughts there, and most blogs, the way they're set up, when you leave a comment there's the option so that you'll get notification if anyone else responds. So if you left a comment on my blog, there's a little button you can check so that if I respond to you, you'll get an email that says I've responded to you, or for that matter, anyone else responds to that particular post. There's something else that blogs have called trackbacks. And essentially what a trackback is if somebody else writes an entry where on their own blog, or anything else that has an RSS feed in it, where they link back to your blog, your entry will receive a trackback. So at the bottom of my entry, if someone else has written a similar entry where they've linked to my thing, I'll get a little notice there that says somebody has, essentially cited me in their blog. So I can go then and see what they've said. Because the conversation doesn't necessarily flow. You post an entry and there's all these comments. I might post an entry about something that gets you thinking about something. You might post an entry on your own blog about it. It sends a track back to mine, and you can start to follow the conversation that way. Those are two ways that I think.
I was going to just say, because of the nature of the way mine's set up, there is actually conversation. And so what I love is when you have, our classes are limited to 40 in a teaching class, and that's big. And so there will be students who are very quiet, and I'll read their blogs, and then next day I come to class, I'll bring up with them some things, or it's part of the conversation. So very much I use that almost to pull some direction with class, because I'm having them write the blog to show me they're coming to understand something, and they'll even see growth within themselves from the beginning to the end because of that chronological order. But I try to use it to then continue the conversation, like physically face-to-face too.